So you walk into a store and the hyper ambitious salesperson walks up to you and says, "May I help you?" What's your response going to be? For most of us, the response is, "No thanks, just looking." Why do we give that response? That's the subject of today's episode. So when we say "no thanks, just looking," is it because we think that the salesperson doesn't know as much about the store as we do? What I find is that it's because people feel that the individual doing the selling is looking out for just themselves. And in fact, what they tend to do is everything they focus on is through their lens. I often refer to this as axis displacement disorder. That's when the individual believes the axis of the earth has shifted and now the world revolves around them. But we need to make sure that in our businesses, we don't come across that way too. And the way that often shows up is we tend to talk about what it is that we are selling, and we overlook why it is that people are buying. So I want you to think of it in a medical metaphor. If you were somebody who is a doctor, you perform procedures related to carpal tunnel surgery. You can't just walk up to people and say to them, "Oh, we have the best carpal tunnel surgery. In fact, our treatment is incredible. We actually make it so that your recovery period is pain-free. It happens so quickly, you won't even know that you had surgery just a couple weeks after the procedure." Because most of the people you talk to aren't going to need carpal tunnel surgery. So if you led with your treatment, in essence the procedure that you perform, most of the people are going to think you're just a crackpot and you're crazy. So instead, what would a good physician do? Well, a good physician would think to themselves, let's see, I treat people who have carpal tunnel syndrome. Now, they probably also realize that most people who have carpal tunnel syndrome don't even know they have it. So they're not aware of the condition that they have, but they are aware of what? Well, they're aware of the symptoms that they would be experiencing. So what are some of the symptoms that you might be experiencing if you had carpal tunnel syndrome? Well, you might experience numbness in your fingers. You might have desensitivity. You might have pain in your fingers or in your wrist or your hand. It might get worse under certain circumstances versus others. So instead of going out to the community and saying to people, "Hey, I treat carpal tunnel syndrome," you want to get there earlier in the process. Because let's face it, once somebody knows that they have carpal tunnel syndrome, what do? They ask people, well, which one takes my insurance? And who else has used them? We start looking for references. But early on in the process, if you're just having these symptoms and somebody helps diagnose that condition, that's the person you already trust because they helped identify a problem that you were experiencing that you didn't even know that you had. What that means is that when we communicate with our potential clients, we need to be acutely aware of the problems that we solve or the symptoms they may be experiencing. So for that physician, what they might do is they might reach out to other doctors who would be a center of influence, people who aren't surgeons in that area, and say, here are some of the symptoms that patients might exhibit that could be an indication of this condition of carpal tunnel syndrome that we're really good at treating. And so if you run into somebody who has at least two of these symptoms, please feel free to refer them to us. And as soon as we get any sort of diagnosis, we'll get back to you, whether it's positive or negative, so that you can communicate back with the patient. Similarly, what they would do is when someone comes in, they'd say, well, here are the types of symptoms that people experience. And that can be an indication of this condition. And if it's not treated, here's what can happen. You can end up with nerve damage, things like that. So keep in mind, I'm not trying to tell you how to be a physician. What I want you to do instead is think about in your business, what are the symptoms that you're really good at treating? Because then what you're talking about with potential clients is here are the symptoms that we treat, here are the problems that we solve, less so about what it is that you do. And that way all of your questions relate to what is it that your client or prospect is trying to solve that you're good at addressing. Now you might actually bring up things they hadn't even thought of. So let's say you were a digital marketing expert. Instead of saying, oh, we're a digital marketing firm and we do SEO and we do Facebook advertising and things like that, that people may not even know they need, they might instead reach out to somebody and say, People come to us when they have amazing stuff, but their message falls on deaf ears. Their inferior competitors are getting all the attention and no one gives them the time of day. Those are the types of things that we solve convincingly, but not everyone we talk to is the right fit for how we solve that. So next time, make sure that you're showing up not as somebody who's just there to sell something, but somebody who is there to solve something. And the easiest way to do that is focus on the symptoms that you're good at treating rather than focusing on the treatment that you're trying to sell. Feel free to visit SameSideSellingAcademy.com and make sure to take the Same Side Selling Academy assessment to see how aligned your team is with same-side selling.